Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Center for Technical Development webinar. We really appreciate you joining us today for this special webinar that we've got a new series on sharing of projects and programs from different districts so that we can all share information together and get to know a little bit about each other. Just so I can make sure that the audio is working and that you can see my screen, if anyone can type something in that questions box, let me know you can hear me. A good afternoon, hello, yes, anything will do just to let me know that things are working out there. Great. Okay, awesome. I'm seeing some things come in. Thank you very much, folks. Also, now you know how to ask a question. So if any time during this presentation, if you have a question that comes up, please type it in that questions box, and or you'll see a little hand icon and you can raise your hand and you'll be able to ask questions that way. If you raise your hand, we can unmute you. You can ask direct. So once again, there'll be some natural breaks in the presentation today that you can ask questions. But again, if anything comes up as the presentation moves along, please put it in that questions box. Also, I just want to let you know of some upcoming webinars, just so you're aware of where to find those on the Center for Technical Development webpage under training. And if you click on training events, the first tab there, you'll see CTD webinars and web training. You'll be able to see what webinars are coming up and register for those ahead of time and get all of those on your calendar. If you missed one, or including today, which is always recorded, you can find those under webinar archive and recording. So you will find links to previous presentations and trainings under here, as well as any links that are provided during presentations and PowerPoint slides when provided by the presenter. So a great way to go back if you have questions to share, or if you're not able to join us live, you can find everything here. Our normal presentations are the third Thursday of the month. This one, the second Tuesday of the month, is, like I said, our new series that we're excited to kick off today with the Snohomish Conservation District on a special project that they're going to share with us. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters to get us going. We have David Jackson and Derek Hahn from the Snohomish Conservation District today, and they're going to share with us about a stormwater project that they did, as well as how this might be something that your district can look to for future work in collaboration. So with that, David, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thanks so much. So my name is David Jackson. I am the Community Conservation Program Manager for Snohomish Conservation District. With me today is our Stormwater and Community Conservation Engineer, Derek Hahn. You'll be hearing from both of us. If you have questions, please go ahead and raise your hand. There will be some breaks in this presentation where we will specifically ask for questions, and you can direct them to either or both of us. Today, I will be talking about a grant that we took over a few years ago and the lessons that we learned from it. The grant was called the Regional Stormwater Action Team. It did about what you would imagine, but let's talk a little bit more about what we learned in retrospect. So a little bit about the Snohomish Conservation District and the Community Conservation Team. I'm not going to explain what a conservation district is to everybody because I'm looking at the attendees and I'm seeing a lot of familiar names. So I know that most of you are very aware of exactly what conservation districts do. Snohomish Conservation District and the Community Conservation Team is a little bit different than other ones we found in the region. In that we have a very robust stormwater infrastructure and urban agriculture program. We also do projects for fire safe communities and residential habitats, also called backyard habitat. We have been extremely lucky in the past few years, essentially since Derek joined, to really have a robust green stormwater infrastructure program. And the point of this grant was to share some of the lessons that we have learned about that program and really sort of open it up to other districts who may want to start their own program. and that we might be able to share some of these lessons with. This is an example of what we do as far as stormwater goes. These are kind of the three big types that we do. We have some rain catchment over there at a school. Up in the top left, we have a really beautiful rain garden that we installed for the Tulalip tribes. And then in the bottom left, we have a terraced garden, which is similar to a rain garden, but using compost socks as sort of slope retention wattles. That also filters rain garden, but in a much more compact and obviously more dramatic space. We're very fortunate that we've been able to do this kind of work for a while, and that we have learned so much from our partner CDs about how this work can be done, and really just make a not to brag, but a really remarkable program. And I feel like I can say that because I sort of inherited this program. This isn't mine from the ground up. It really is Derek's baby in a lot of ways, but we're extremely proud of it, and we feel extremely fortunate that we've been able to build this. So the Regional Stormwater Action Team was a grant from the Conservation Commission and the Department of Ecology. It involved working with our other partner CDs, who I'll mention here in just a moment, to develop to really specialize stormwater programs in micro scale projects and programs for their district. It was built around the idea of providing technical assistance, specifically for stormwater. What's important about that is that we were not coming into their districts and doing projects for them. We were collaborating with them on the projects that they wanted done. There was a term that we constantly tossed around when we were talking about this in the office, when we were also allowed to be in the office, which was increased capacity. Everything that we do has to increase the capacity of the partner CD. We have to be taking lessons and kind of engaging them where they want to be, how they want to do this, which leads to a lot of very diverse projects done under this program. Everything needed to be sort of bespoke and customized to the partner CD. So the three major parts of that broke down into GSI. Those were the actual projects that were getting installed, GSI standing for Green Stormwater Infrastructure. Outreach and education, how we were reaching the people that we were working with, and working with them directly to either get them on board to have a project installed, or to educate them on what GSI was, what the program was, in some cases what the conservation district was. And then finally, in partner coordination and increased capacity. This was all about team building, partnership building. We didn't want to just show up, say, hey, do you want 6 rain gardens? Build 6 rain gardens, say, cool, see you again, never. We really wanted this to be a way for as many partner districts as possible to sort of get introduced to each other and to really work together on a greater degree. So before I go any further, I don't want to bore everybody with a ton of text. So I wanted to take a break and show probably one of the coolest projects that we've done. This was before we actually started on the Pierce portion of the Stormwater Action Team. This was a project that we cooperated with Pierce to build a demonstration DPAVE project. It was one of the coolest DPAVE projects that I think we have ever done. Melissa Buckingham was our contact on that, and I see that she's in the audience. It was massive. It was enormous. There were parts of it that we had to really kind of explore and dig around because we didn't know what was there. And it ended up just being a really fantastic project. And it was an interesting sort of harbinger for what it was going to be like to work, between CDs and see this job done. I also just really love DPAVEs. They're some of the highest impact projects that you can get. And it's always incredible when you're doing the outreach portion of DPAVEs to talk to people and kind of see them connect that like depaving is even an option. We all think of like, well, once concrete's down, pavement is kind of forever. And to have people just go, what do you mean you can just tear up a portion of a parking lot? Is really a great moment. And this one was probably one of the coolest we've ever done. We would love to take questions on that one when we get to that point. So let's talk first about partner coordination and kind of what it means. So as I said before, partner coordination was about increasing capacity. It was also about assisting with outreach, assisting with design, and assisting with implementation. Assisting with outreach was usually just resources and explaining to people kind of this is what we do. But because we wanted so badly for this to be a project that that got our cooperators, the people we were actually doing the installation for, to identify with their conservation district, we tried to kind of stay hands off for outreach. And the result was pretty great. Our partner CDs did an incredible job really getting out there and you know, being involved in the community, which is exactly why we picked them, is because their conservation districts are amazing at being involved in our community. Design was another thing. As I said, Derek is kind of a rock star when it comes to rain garden design. He's on this call, so I get to embarrass him. And we did, to different degrees, either were or were not involved in the design. Some of these conservation districts, some of our partner CDs had very robust design programs, and we didn't, really need to do anything, but we did spend some time to show them, well, this is how we do it. In some cases, they hadn't done a lot of rain garden design before, and so Derek got to kind of take the reins and say this is how it's done. One of the incredible things about rain garden design is that, especially with the rain garden manual, it's not meant to be something that requires a lot of engineering. It's meant for people to be able to do it themselves. I mean, even I'm the furthest thing from an engineer, and I've done rain garden design for a few years. So it really was something that we could pass off to even districts that don't have a robust design program, and really kind of empower them to say this is a service. This technical this technical assistance. This is a service that is very there's a low bar for offering it. And then implementation. Implementation was all done using our crew, the Veteran Conservation Corps, which I will talk about in depth a little bit later. That was something that we see that as a really serious hurdle. The question of who's going to design it, who's going to implement it, who's going to pay for it. Question to all of those was us. We'll help you design it, we'll pay for it, and we will go ahead and we will make sure it gets installed. So as an example of coordination, this is a rain garden cluster that we worked on in the Port of Anacortes. That is one of our VCC members putting some plants in the ground there. This was back in January, in the before times, and was a real fun project that we could do back when it was still pretty cold. Normally we don't try to do implementation too early in the winter, but these ones were very fun. We did this one with the partnership of Skagit CD and the Port of Anacortes.
I will say one of the reasons that we decided to do that one is because it's very much in the rain shadow. I think they only get like 12 inches a year of rain at that port. So we felt comfortable going forward doing the install just because we were pretty confident it was not going to rain.
Yeah, we hold our actual installation season is pretty narrow in terms of a total calendar. And the reason we do that is, I mean, for safety for both our crew and the project. When we don't do ground disturbing activity when it's too wet, that puts us on really very literally shaky ground in terms of safety. Anacortes was, as Derek said, in the rain shadow. It's a little bit more. We were a little bit more comfortable doing that one because we didn't think that we were going to have any problems with our projects getting washed out there.
The other issue is that bioretention soil, if it's placed wet, seals itself up and it reduces the infiltration rate. So that's why another reason we don't like to do installations of bioretention in the winter.
Yeah. Okay, so talking about our partner CDs, I'm missing a few here. because we had lots of conversations and we worked through a lot of stuff. But the 4 that I want to highlight, the 4 that are mentioned here, Skagit, Mason, Whatcom, and Pierce. And I see a number of at least Skagit and Pierce, and it looks like Whatcom on this call as well. These were the 4 that we initially worked with, and I want to be clear that we had more partnerships, and we were doing a lot with having a lot of conversations and trying to increase capacity, and doing some outreach with other ones. But these were the 4 that we primarily put projects in the ground, and the ones that I'm going to be talking about most in this presentation. So rain gardens and GSI, the first thing that we talked about. There's sort of 3 types of rain gardens in GSI that we looked at when we were doing this. The first one, residential gardens, which we almost always install in clusters. Commercial gardens, which are either on public or commercial lands, and then ponds. And we don't retrofit ponds, but we do offer technical assistance to make sure that ponds are well cared for. Oh, I am so sorry, guys. I am still getting used to GoToWebinar. So yeah, we make sure that ponds are still are well cared for. We don't do nearly as much retrofit for them. So residential rain gardens, they are usually clusters of between 6 to 8. Especially this last year, we trended more towards 6 than we did 8, just because it's 2020 and people were a little bit more resistant. So we, residential gardens are clusters around 6. They're built on private residences, and we use the cluster approach to increase the economy of scale. We want them to be near each other so that we can, move from one project to the next, do them in stages, have minimized travel time for both crew and materials between them, and we see a lot of success with that. Where the average rain garden may take $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000, just in materials and labor to install. We are usually able to get a full cluster of 6 to 8 rain gardens in the ground for closer to around like 25,000. It's which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're doing these consistently, especially for grant purposes, it's a huge deal. Our residential gardens are overwhelmingly the most popular. They are the smallest. They are usually kind of the in terms of the water they're taking up, they're not taking up as much water, and the water isn't as polluted. But they are, homeowners love them, cities love them because homeowners love them, and it's much easier to get people on board, and they make great demonstration projects. So they're kind of a great gateway to GSI if you're looking for a place to start, starting with residential clusters or even just individual residential gardens. So this is an example of the Ferndale cluster. These are 4 houses that were completed there. This is what they look like when they finish, before we're actually putting plants in the ground. You see this thick layer of mulch that goes over the top. That's to keep weeds down. You see the inflows and the outflows covered in rocks. The outflows are essentially just spillways in the case of major rain events. I don't think I can't remember the last time that we actually had one of those occur where the outflow was used, but we like to include them just to make sure that the water doesn't blow out the side. It's just kind of like a pressure release valve. And then you see over here the inlet pipe, which is coming from the downspouts from these pipes here, coming off of the roof into the garden and sinking into the bottom. We are in the middle of our planting period, so I do not have any pictures of them planted yet because they are being planted as we speak. But the Ferndale clusters, as a matter of fact, I believe that Whatcom is working on getting those planted right now. But this is a general idea of what they look like, and these are about the size and about the placement. You want them in the front yard. You want them appropriately sized, and you can see how they kind of blend into the landscaping. Once these things get planted, they don't look like a quote unquote rain garden. They look like nice, just native landscaping. It's part of the reason that they are so popular. So commercial gardens, these conversely are done one at a time. They take about as long, they cost about as much, but they are one at a time. You find one cooperator, one location, and you go to town. These are also more commonly, or far more commonly than residential gardens, deep paves. I showed you an example of the deep pave earlier on. That is just taking a portion of the concrete or the asphalt up and allowing water to infiltrate through what was previously a permeable surface. These are significantly larger because they're taking up a much larger contributing area. They are also taking up a higher quantity of water and a much more polluted type of water. You're getting oil runoff. You're often getting fecal coliform. You're often getting different nutrients and heavy metals. You're taking it off of big industrial buildings or parking lots. And they're also much more public facing. You can put in signage, but you generally are going to see a lot more people interacting with these gardens because they are built on public or commercial properties. These are really high impact projects, and they're really popular when you can find the right person, which can be a little bit of a struggle sometimes. Derek and I have been working for a while on kind of shifting towards doing more and more commercial gardens. People are reluctant to give up parking space, but when you find the right person, ooh, buddy, it's these projects are just awesome. So this is an example, a little step-by-step of one that we did in Skagit. This is Jefferson Elementary. You can see this is the area before it was excavated. There is our excavator tearing up the ground. We dug a trench in here for infiltration. This is the amendment after it was backfilled. This is the RGM 60-40, 60% sand, 40% compost. And it needs to still be smoothed out, but this is, the idea is that you backfill this hole. This is after it's been smoothed out. You can see, the inflows and the outflows. In this case, we don't have the piping that directly inflows. The idea is we're taking overland inflow. And this rockery here is protecting the mulch to keep it from going in, floating and floating off. And then the outflows there, just in case the garden does get overwhelmed. This similarly has not yet been planted. That is something that we are working on, I believe, in 2 weeks. I
will say that I just went up there this afternoon to check on it because I wanted to see it during the big rain event, and it's working really well. There used to be, you could see it from the aerials, a big stain that appeared because that field was constantly weeping water over that pavement. And when I went up today, there's no sign of that at all. So it looks like everything that had been weeping onto that pavement is pretty much fully taken care of by the rain garden, which I was really encouraged by.
Yeah, that's kind of the sort of hallmark of these larger projects, is they really do a great job, more often even in the residential gardens, or I think almost anything that we do, they really take care of flooding areas. And the water that they're taking up that usually is standing, it's just incredibly unhealthy. And building them around existing stormwater, which may or may not be treated depending on what kind of system it's on, it solves a ton of problems. So we really love doing these larger ones. Overwhelmingly, schools and churches are like our biggest customers when it comes to these. They are just the most willing to go along with it, and we love that, because there's a lot of people that are walking by. They're interacting with a lot of folks. We get to engage with kids a ton when we do these projects. Unfortunately, not as much right now because of the issues around schooling, but normally, we get to spend a lot of time doing a lot of education, which is just the best. So then finally, stormwater ponds. So we cribbed Skagit's playbook on technical assistance classes. I went up there and I sat through one of their TA classes and was blown away by the attendance, and by just how good the technical assistance was. And I came back and said, we got to have one of these. So we put one together. We're working on it now. Currently, it is it's one of the things that is, I think, most clamored for, especially in stormwater ponds that are so commonly owned by HOAs, not city maintained. There's a lot of sort of misunderstanding about how they can perform maintenance, how they can engage in the process, and what they're required to do. And these aren't people that know a lot of this stuff, but they're also people that want to make sure they do the right thing. So we have found that site visits and follow-up, being that letters, being that like specific technical assistance, document finding, all of that stuff to stormwater ponds, specifically HOAs and any other organization that has privately maintained stormwater ponds, has been really, really very effective. Again, we took a page right out of Skagit's book, and that's part of what is so great about the regional stormwater grants, is it's not one way. We got it because we know that there's a lot of what people are doing out there is phenomenal, and everyone's innovating in different ways. And part of what was so cool about this is we got to go around and just learn as much as we could from everybody, and then share it back out to everybody else. So this is a detention pond site visit that Derek and I did. This one was not connected to the regional stormwater action team, but it's just a very nice photo of a very kind of overwhelmed pond. This one is in our own home district, and it's a great example of Derek and I would go out there, socially distanced with masks on. Actually, Derek, I think this was the first site visit you and I did after the COVID restrictions were on absolutely no site visits were released. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, if I remember right, we were very excited to see other humans. So we socially distanced, masked on. We took a tour around, and then we wrote up a letter and a memo to the city and to the homeowners and said, if you want to maintain this pond properly, this is what you can do. Here's some ways that you can reduce your maintenance. Here's some people that you can maybe talk to. Here's where you can find appropriate documentation and stuff. And that's a very kind of a good example of the easy way to do that. There's a lot of really great stormwater pond retrofit stuff that I'm seeing now, which is far more expensive and way cooler. We haven't gotten into that stuff yet, but I am hoping that might be the next logical step. So then finally, outreach and education. So we kind of focus this around three main points: outreach events, which had to be adapted; webinars, which again were adapted from the idea of going and doing presentations in purpose; and again that guiding idea of increasing capacity. So not just telling people, hey, here's what we found out, here's what you already know, thanks, bye, but really, hey, what questions do we still have? What did we learn? What might you guys be able to learn? How can we make sure that everybody can walk away from this feeling like they have more capacity to do stormwater, specifically green stormwater work? So the outreach events, we're still kind of working on that one. And as a matter of fact, I think I saw my education, a couple of my education people in the audience, and they will tell you more than anybody else that I've been losing sleep over how to pull off some of these outreach events. Normally, what we would do, well, I'll save that for next because I think I have a picture of it in the next slide. But we're working on how to do that. The webinars have been a little bit of a godsend, or at least a way that we can have some kind of normalcy. I'm still able to give these presentations. I wish that I could be there in person and answering everyone's questions. Unfortunately, that is not the case. But yeah, they have been at least a little bit of a saving grace. So this is what a rain garden planting event pre-COVID looked like. You see a couple homeowners over here. You see our stoic engineer Derek over here. And we would all gather closer than 6 feet sometimes, without masks on, like crazy people. And we would actually do these big planting events where we would go in, we'd have all the plants purchased and placed, and then we'd get a bunch of volunteers to start, moving the mulch aside and putting them in the ground. And it was an incredible opportunity to engage with the homeowners, to really help them take ownership over the gardens because they were getting their hands dirty, and also to engage in volunteers and talk about the program and what kind of like what kind of plants are going in here, why, how do rain gardens work, what is this program, what else can you do, can we help you in some specific way. Now our events look far more like this. You can't quite tell, but I am standing 6 feet behind our friend Kari here. We are selling rain barrels. They are spaced out so that people can actually just drive down this pathway over here, park, we load up the rain barrel. They've all paid in advance. We still get some time with them to chat a little bit about what we do, but it's significantly less. I'm wearing a mask, which I'm certain everyone appreciates. And we do a lot of our education through these flyers that we have here. This was for Orca Day, and this was a lot of information about how rain barrels help with salmon habitat, how salmon help orcas. So in addition to how to properly install and maintain your rain barrel, we also have some information about why we're doing this and why we're pushing rain barrels. So not as intensive, but still effective. So before I move on to talk about the Veteran Conservation Corps, I want to take a break. I meant to do a little bit earlier and see if anybody has any questions for Derek.
And just a reminder for folks that please enter your questions into the questions box, or you can raise your hand and I can call on you. A couple questions that are in there. Looks like one is a comment from earlier on in your description that said that Sequim is the driest place in Western Washington at 17 inches. Annual average precip Anacortes gets as much as about Port Angeles. So I think that was in comment to an earlier part of your presentation. And a question that did come in, are you working with the cities or counties on this HOA stormwater facilities?
We are working primarily with the cities. We've done a little bit with our own county, but the cities have been the ones that are really asking for it because a lot of the times the HOAs, the cities are the ones that are doing the inspection and finding out that the HOAs are not in compliance. And they don't want to hold the HOA responsible, and the HOA, if they don't have the resources and the wherewithal to actually carry out maintenance, sometimes these are inherited, sometimes these ponds are crazy old and they've changed hands so many times that the new HOA president has no idea what the requirements are. So they have been asking for us to put something together so that we can all just we can get everybody on the same page. And it becomes a little bit more fair about what the HOA and what the city are asking of each other.
Great. Okay, another question that came in. Do you plan to use the stormwater pond TA work to get the residents into the RG cluster program?
If it works out, that sounds great. I don't think we've done that yet. And the main reason is that the clusters that we work on are usually specifically city funded, and the cities have an equal in our own district. The cities have our city's partners have equal share to us with determining where the cluster is going to be located. And we usually go by needs and waterways. Sometimes that will mean that there is a detention pond that is now getting less volume, which is awesome. And sometimes when we do outreach and TA for stormwater ponds, people will get more interested in rain gardens because they'll go, oh, this is, thanks so much for coming out here. Is there anything else that we can do for stormwater? Is blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff. So it can work that way. It's not really a goal. If we, because so much of what we do is unfortunately driven by funding, if there was a way to approach stormwater pond outreach through the lens of if we can do enough stormwater pond outreach, we can get these clusters and we can have this funding source to install rain garden clusters. Yeah, absolutely. That would be a great way to do it. We don't have that funding source. So they, at the moment, they're kind of separate, though there is some overlap.
Thank you. Last question that we have here on the current slide, you have the acronym GSI. Would you please define that?
Yeah, GSI stands for Green Stormwater Infrastructure. Rain gardens, deep pave projects, stormwater detention ponds, arguably rain barrels, native filter strips are all part of GSI. So it's just like normal stormwater infrastructures with drains, culverts, but green, meaning using plants.
Perfect, thanks. I don't see any other questions coming in at this time, so you guys can continue on. Again, if you do have questions, put them in. We'll have another chance here in a bit to answer those.
Okay, so I really can't go much further in this presentation without talking about the Veteran Conservation Corps. The Veteran Conservation Corps is Derek's brainchild, and it's an extremely unique it's an extremely unique program. It allows us to do these GSI installations and GSI maintenance in ways that we frankly would not otherwise be able to do. One of the major issues that we face with any kind of installation is number of hurdles. As I said, there's sort of three major hurdles: who's going to pay for it, who's going to design it, who's going to install it. When we come in with a grant, we have answered this is who's going to pay for it. When we come in with a city partnership, we've answered who's going to pay for it. When we have our engineer or we're empowering people to design it themselves, we've answered the question who's going to design it. When we get to who's going to install it, it gets a little bit more complicated. And there are several times that we would not have been able to move forward with a grant, with a project, with a partner, if we did not have our own source to do these installations. They have opened tremendous numbers of doors for us. In addition to that, they are probably one of our greatest outreach assets. I have, and I'm certain Derek has 10 more times than I have, been told to my face that the only reason that somebody is even interested in a project is because they have heard that the veterans are going to install it. This opens a number of doors for us. This gives us opportunities that we otherwise would not have, and really accents our already robust outreach procedures. I really can't overstate just how incredible this group is. They work damn hard. They come in incredibly competent. There's very minimal on-the-job training that's needed, and they are. I mean, I hate being in the paper. I hate being on the news. Media loves covering and talking to them, and it is an absolute godsend because they do such an incredible job representing the district and the sort of work that we do. If you have questions about this, I really do suggest, I'm happy to sort of talk through it. I'd really suggest talking to Derek about it. They are his brainchild. He conceived of them several years ago, and I think that he's probably the best resource in the district if you are interested in this program. And I honestly cannot recommend having one of these crews. If you have the ability and the capacity and the need for them, I cannot recommend one of these crews high enough. So yeah, I can't let it just go with that. You have to actually see what the VCC look like. All of these projects are pre-COVID, as you can tell by, again, no masks, standing much closer to each other. As you can see, this is, I mean, it's a whole group of people that are working extremely hard, doing incredible work, but also just very charming and really hard not to love. Where this is initially breaking ground at that St. Anne tulip garden that I was telling you about. This is a private deep pave that we did nearby in the city of Everett that also had some significant terracing going on. And then this is the planting project at a school, and I'm blanking on which one it is, but it's also a great example of them installing signage and installing plants at the same time.
I think it's at Jackson.
You know what, you're right, it is at Jackson. So let's talk for a second about some major lessons learned. A friend of mine always says when he talks about restoration work, there's a lot of work to be done. There's just not a lot of money. That is absolutely true. There are tons and tons of opportunities for GSI across the entire PSCD, which is where we focused our efforts. It's kind of incredible just how much opportunity there is for these kind of projects. We had to turn people down, unfortunately, because we had limited funding. We had to, turn projects away because we had a limited time frame. It's really just incredible how much is actually out there. Even more than that, there are more approaches. I started to realize about halfway through this that if you put 4 CDs in a room, you would come up with 6 different ways to do any single project. Everybody has in their bag ways that are going to work for them, and it's really remarkable to come in to this program very much like, hey, this is what we want to do. I have a really good plan. I think I know, how I can push this forward, and sit down and really talk. All right, what do you need from us? And have something completely out of the blue that I've never considered, I've never had to work with before, and just sent me scrambling with, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to come up with an answer for that. And it was probably the best part of this project is working with all of our different partner CDs and coming up with so much really original and unique things, so many original and unique approaches. And then the last one, which shouldn't be a shock to anybody, coordinating outside of your own district is hard. And I want to take a second to just thank all of our partner CDs for how easy they made it to work across districts. Conservation districts are very much set up to work inside our own boundaries. And when you go beyond that, you start borrowing trouble in a huge way. I think that this very easily could have been a disaster. But a lot of folks besides myself in our partner CDs, we're very dedicated to seeing this all the way through. We are very grateful to them and hope that they had as much fun as we did. So what is next? So we need to start applying the lessons learned. We need to start, the lessons in our district. That means taking the lessons that we learned from everybody else and seeing how we can apply them locally. I hope for other districts that means looking at the projects that we did together and seeing how they might either adjust or increase their capacity to take on some more or different stormwater work, and then how we can continue to partner. Blake often says, who's at Skagit CD, often says that water doesn't care about boundaries. And that was a huge lesson in all of this, is that a raindrop that falls in Skagit is pretty similar to a raindrop that falls in Whatcom, or a raindrop that falls in Pierce, or a raindrop that falls in Mason or Thurston. And we're all sharing a water body. We're all sharing the Puget Sound or the Salish Sea, or in some cases, several rivers. So continuing to partner and figure out how to plan and act regionally is going to become incredibly important, especially as we see more development. And I really hope that everybody on this webinar feels empowered to reach out to either your partner CDs or reach out to us and kind of talk about how we might be able to do some more regional planning. I can tell you right now that I was incredibly disappointed with how many people I had to essentially say no to, because it's a limited grant. There's only so many. We only have so many work days in the year, and we only have so much money. And we had to say no to doing projects with people, which I hate. I would have liked for this to go on for the next 3 years and to keep doing stuff with folks. So I think that the balm for that is, if you didn't get a project and you wanted one, I guarantee you that I wanted one too. So please reach out and say, hey, David, we didn't get to do a cluster, but what if we do this? And we'll figure out how to keep working, because, we gotta. So that is it for me. If you have any questions for Derek and I think we have about 15 minutes left. I timed that pretty good. My contact information is up on the screen there. Please feel free to contact me with any questions, comments, or hopes for the future. And more than happy to take questions with the time we have left.
Yeah, so just a reminder for folks, please put your questions in the questions box, or you can click that little hand button. I'll unmute you and you can just ask direct if that's a bit easier. I do see a comment from Cindy. Excellent presentation. I agree. Thank you very much, both of you, for this great presentation and for sharing this work. I hope that others on the webinar are also inspired by not only the work that you did, but the way that you reached out to other districts and collaboratively worked together. I think it's a great investment for all districts to start doing that a little bit more. Expand not only the sharing of our expertise, but also the results and farther reaching of what we can do together. Many hands make light work, as we all know. So this is a great example of that. So just a reminder for those, any questions that you've got, please put them in the questions box now, or of course, the contact information is up on the board if you'd prefer to contact David directly, or Derek also at Snohomish Conservation District.
So let me interject for just a second and say huge thanks to CTD for giving us a venue for this. I know right now we're all kind of scrambling and scrabbling to figure out how this stuff is going to work. Yeah, just an enormous thank you to Nicole and CTD for giving us a venue. If we don't have questions, one thing that I did not get into, but if we have time, that'd be great. Derek, can you chat for a second about kind of how the VCC came together?
Yeah. So we had probably 7 years ago, we were really struggling to get homeowners to build the rain gardens because the model we had was just giving them cost share, and then they were responsible for construction. And it was completely overwhelming for most homeowners. So we started dabbling in using our own WCC crew to do the construction, and they would, so that was our portion of the cost share, and then the homeowner would pay for the materials. And that was a much more successful model. But our problem was we couldn't get a second WCC crew, so we only had them for a couple of weeks a year during the summer. And we also at the time noticed that there was a couple of veterans on the WCC crew that really particularly liked the rain garden work. So I connected with, I'd been looking around for a long time trying to figure out how to make it work, get an old veteran crew, and I finally connected with the VCC, which already existed. And they had IP positions historically, but they hadn't done a full crew model. So we were the first ones to come in and do a crew with them. Yeah, and there was a lot of lessons learned at the beginning, but it's been a really successful program, and we're hoping to continue to grow that both in other districts and then within our own district.
And to clarify, an IP is an individual placement. So the VCC was specifically, putting individuals into internship positions. Derek is the one who really pioneered the idea of having a full crew of 4 of them kind of working all together. To my knowledge, there's only one other crew, VCC crew in the state, and to my knowledge, in the West Coast or possibly the nation. But I know that there is at least one other one. Any questions before Derek and I jump over to our next meeting?
I am seeing a couple. One that came in, how much does the crew cost per day? Can you do it for just the summer months?
VCC has been incredibly flexible with us, and we have vacillated kind of on an almost year-to-year basis. We did primarily do it just in the summer months when we were doing ground disturbing activity. We recently moved them over to a full year, a year-round schedule. But then due to a scheduling quirk, we'll actually be back in 2021 to just doing in the summer months. The VCC in particular, ConFam, has been phenomenal and flexible with kind of working around with us in terms of rates and schedule and all of that stuff. The crew routinely costs about 200 per crew member per day.
But they work 10-hour days.
Yeah, and they work 10-hour days. So for a week it's 800 per person. So if a full crew of 4, not including the foreman, which in our case is a VCC or as an SCD staff member, who is also a veteran himself. The crew usually costs about 3,000 or so, 3,200 per week.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I second guessed my math there for a second.
Fair enough. Another question here with the caveat that she wasn't exactly sure how to ask it, but that it is, we have a lot of interest in rain gardens and provide TA brochures on how people could create their own rain garden. I would like to develop this program more. However, I feel like we need an engineer for designing these projects. Question, is that correct? Or is there a level we can do work with someone like you or another contractor to be able to offer design rain gardens to residences?
Well, it depends on who you ask, because if you ask me, I will say no, and if you ask Derek, he'll say maybe. But no, the very interesting thing about rain gardens in particular, and the residential rain gardens, which I think is what you're talking about, as far as approaching homeowners, is that the rain garden is it the rain garden manual for Western Washington, the rain garden handbook for Western Washington? Handbook. Okay, so the rain garden handbook for Western Washington is explicitly meant to work with, to allow people to take that book, plan, design, and build their own and maintain their own rain garden. As a non-engineer, but as a contractor, back in a previous life, I built and I designed and installed a number of rain gardens without needing an engineering degree. I will say that as far as, depending on how developed they are and how developed, how large and how cautious you need to be, it really does help having an engineer, and especially for larger projects such as clusters. I would say having an engineer is going to make everything significantly faster. I do believe that there is a way that you can contract with us through a specific conservation district program to get engineering support. But I will admit that I do not know the full ins and outs of that, so that may be a question to email me and we can have a discussion on.
Yeah, so I'd just say you don't need to be an engineer to do a residential rain garden design, but it does help to have someone there that you can bounce questions off of as you're doing the designs, because it takes, I don't know, 6 or 7 designs in order to kind of figure out what you're doing. And I can help with that, and we can set up an ILA with other conservation districts to figure out how to do that cooperatively. But David will have to figure out the logistics behind all of that. So.
Yeah, we're absolutely happy to help. And as Derek says, it really does help. You do not, if you're doing these one-off, I think it can even be helpful to have somebody, kind of design their own. But if you're going to try to do a number of these, having an engineer to kind of look over your shoulder is a very good idea.
Yeah, a comment in regards to that for Ryan, actually. It says, I think it would be helpful for Derek to say how long it takes him to design a rain garden when he does it.
When I do it,
Mm-hmm.
2 hours, 2 or 3 hours. It probably takes, but I've done over 1,000 of them probably.
Yeah,
So yeah, it takes someone that's fresh to it. It would take quite a bit of time.
yeah, I would say that, contrast that to me when I started out as a Rainwise contractor. It would both the design and the site visit would probably take the better part of 2 days.
Okay, awesome.
If we're including the site visit and the soil test, it'd be 2 hours of field work and about 2 hours in the office.
Yeah. So Derek will do it in quite literally a fraction of the time. I'm faster now, I promise, but not back then.
Great.
I actually need to drop off.
Yeah.
So I have
So
I need to get ready for. So.
Sure. So I was going to say, thank you both kindly for your time today. I know that everyone here, including myself, is giving you a little clap in the background to both David and Derek for your time and your presentation today. If folks on the call have any additional questions, please feel free to contact our speakers. Sounds like they're more than willing to do that at any time. And again, this video or this webinar has been recorded and will be posted up on the CTD website after this. You can watch again, you can share, you can get any additional contact information. I also will say for either of our webinar series, if you have a webinar idea or you have a project or program you would like to share via this webinar platform, either put it in the questions box now and I'll capture that, or feel free to email training@wactd.org and we will get you in the queue. So we're always really interested in ideas for webinars from all different disciplines, as well as you to share something valuable you think other districts are going to benefit from, or kind of a give and receive. If you have a project you'd like to enroll others in, this is a great platform. We're trying to expand to offer that sharing potential to everybody. So once again, thank you so much to our speakers today. Greatly appreciate your time. Thank you to each and every one of you who attended today. And best of luck this holiday season, staying safe and sane. And we hope to see you at a future webinar. Thank you all so much.